Welcome to everybody to this week's edition of the Life and Legacy Show, sponsored by the Seckler Law Firm. My name is Tim Seckler, and I am an estate planning and elder law attorney serving the greater Pittsburgh area. My main office is in Mars, Pennsylvania. And if you haven't heard the show before, what we do here on the radio show is we talk about all things estate planning, elder law, asset protection, wills, trusts, powers of attorney. Sometimes we do more public interest type stuff. Today is going to be an episode that I hope you find helpful. We're going to be chatting about taxes, and the taxes in particular that we're going to be chatting about are the ones that apply around the time of someone's passing away. The multiple death taxes that might apply. We're going to chat about capital gains taxes. I'm going to talk about the new death tax on the middle class, which was cleverly named by your Congress, called the Secure Act, which essentially works out to be an enormous tax hit on your kids. So we're going to do that in the second half of the show. If this show, if you're listening to it on its first airing, airs on 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. If you don't want to have your day ruined by a bad mood, you may not want to listen to the second half of the show. Because I'm going to talk to you about how the government is flat out stealing your retirement accounts. If, however, you are interested in how the government is flat out stealing your retirement accounts, you ought to listen in. And you know, the thing to remember in listening to this radio show or any other radio show or any other media is that attorneys like me that do this type of thing, providing this education, these types of shows, we do this with the understanding that our listeners are not taking legal advice based on anything you hear in the show. This is not legal advice. You are not my client. I'd be happy to become your attorney, but you listening to my radio show does not make you my client. So here's the thing. Learn as much as you can. Take in as much as you can. Hopefully you're entertained a little bit, but do not make legal and technical decisions regarding your family based on anything you hear on this show or any other show, because in a half an hour show, I can only discuss so many details, and there could be some nuances, some things that would impact your plan that we may not be able to cover during the show. So listen, if you have a legal problem, you need legal advice, reach out to us, reach out to somebody else, but do not make decisions based on the contents of this show. All right, disclaimers good, you know. All right, so death taxes. Here's the thing. I have a scene in my mind that I'm fairly sure transpires from time to time, and it's the old guys at McDonald's, right? So picture yourself going into a McDonald's at 7 o'clock in the morning, all right? And I know you haven't been in there; the door's been locked for a year and all the rest. You haven't been in there for a long time, but at some point in time, I think we all have found ourselves standing in line in a McDonald's at 7 o'clock in the morning. And if you can picture yourself standing there, you can smell the hash browns, you can smell the coffee, and you can picture over in the corner, there's a table of little old fellas sitting around a table, and they're just chatting with each other and shooting it up. And you know, they come to McDonald's because the coffee's cheap for seniors and they can't sleep anyway. And so they meet their buddies there every Tuesday morning. But you know what they talk about every Tuesday morning there at the McDonald's? They talk about giving their house to their kids, and you can hear this. You know, my guy says you should give your house to your kid. My guy says you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't give your house to your kid. Your kid's a bum, right? You can picture these old guys kind of heckling each other about giving the house to the kid. Why is it that folks think that they should put their house in their kids' names, right? What are the things driving this decision? And if you've seen it, if you've read a newspaper anytime, you'll see transactions from Mr. Jones to Mr. Jones for $1, right? There's no dollar. This is a gift to the house. We just do $1 because the law is outdated and there has to be this thing called, consideration in any contract. So you can't do a deed for $0. You have to do a deed for $1. But, you know, when people tell me they want to sell their house to their kid for $1, there's no sale here, right? This is a gift. So why are people doing it? Why do the old fellas at McDonald's think this is a great idea? And the answer is because two things. One, they think they're saving money on taxes, right? They don't even know what tax they're talking about, but they know taxes, right? And then the other thing is they're trying to protect that house from the nursing home. Now, they don't understand how Medicaid really works and how the nursing home law really works, but they know, hey, I better be broke by the time I need the nursing home. And so put the house in the kids' names. Now, but this creates some problems, and here we go. So first, let's talk about the tax issues. The first thing to think about here is do we really even have a death tax problem? All right. So when people think about death taxes, the thing that they think about is the federal estate tax. Right? And because the federal estate tax, when it applies, is a heavy hitter. The tax rates are in the 40% range. And if I got some real money, 40% on that money, man, that's a big deal, right? But here's the thing. 99.97% of the population is not going to pay any federal estate tax under the current system. And the reason for that is simple. There is lifetime exemptions from this tax. Okay, so understand that the federal tax, the federal death tax, you can give it away during your life or at your death. They've unified the gift in the estate tax. And if you give away too much money, they're going to tax you on the distributions, on the gifts. But here's the thing, there's an annual exclusion. This year's figure is $15,000. There's also a lifetime exemption. So if you give away to any one child more than $15,000, you have to file a gift tax return. But in addition to the annual exclusion, there's also a lifetime exemption, which currently sits at $11.7 million. So until you give away, either during your life or at your death, under the current system, $11.7 million, there's no federal estate tax. And that's husband and wife. Husband has 11.7, wife has 11.7. So unless you're in a family that has $23 million and some change, if you passed away this month, there's no federal estate tax. Okay, now I said this month because the Biden administration, at least the Biden campaign, said that they were going to lower these numbers. Okay, but for most people, and they are set to sunset in a few years and come back down, but most people do not have a federal estate tax problem. Now, are they going to bring the number down? Yeah, probably. How far? My opinion, I don't think all that far. Maybe 5 million. There's rumors about 3.5. We don't really know. It's all rumorville right now. But they're probably going to bring that number down. But here's the history on it. Because if there's lifetime exemptions of $11 million, why does anybody care about the federal estate tax? There might be some listeners that have $11 million. I think that's awesome. I would think you'd probably agree that most of my listeners do not have $11 million. So why is everybody worried about it? Well, historically, we used to have to worry about it a lot more because back in like the late 90s, the lifetime exemption was below $700,000. And there's a lot of people, if you count the retirement account in the house and some life insurance proceeds, exceed $700,000. So it used to be the case that a lot more people had to pay the federal estate tax. But not anymore, and it hasn't been that way. It went to about $1 million, I think, during the Clinton administration. George W. Bush's administration during that time period, it went to $5 million. President Obama left it at $5 million, and then Trump doubled it. It was indexed for inflation, which is how you get to $11.7 million. Now that's set to sunset in a couple of years, or the Biden administration may take action to try to bring that number back down. But here's cynical Tim telling you why I don't think you really care all that much. Is most senators die as millionaires. Whether they're, I don't know how these senators become millionaires while they're supposed to be serving the public good, but I think that's a conversation for another day. But if they don't become millionaires while they're serving, odds are they're going to write the book, or they're going to get the endorsement, or they're going to do the lobbying after their term is over, and then they're going to die as millionaires. So call me cynical. I don't think these guys are going to vote themselves into a 40% death tax. I don't know, but I have my suspicions. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about federal death tax. You do have to worry if you pass away as a Pennsylvania resident. We do have to consider Pennsylvania's death tax. It's called the inheritance tax. So Pennsylvania has a death tax, and the rate of the tax that is going to apply depends on the relationship to the person who passed away. So if you leave assets to your spouse, there's not going to be any tax due. It's a 0% rate. If you leave assets to your descendants, meaning kids and grandkids, the tax rate is 4.5%. Right? So if you have kids, and that's where the money's going, we're probably not overly concerned about the tax bill. The thinking is, well, look, I've got $100,000 I'm going to leave to my boy Johnny. And yeah, he's going to have to pay the death tax, but it's only 4.5%. So Johnny can get $95,500. I'm not going to rearrange my life to save him $4,500. And I think that that thinking is generally accurate, because the things that you have to do to save the Pennsylvania death tax typically involve you giving up control of your money in some way or fashion, which has its own concerns about, giving up control of your money, whether you want to do that or not. But also, secondarily, it has what we call capital gains tax concerns, which is, I guess, where we're going next. But the point is, there's this common knowledge out there, whether we talk about the guys at McDonald's, or you're talking to your brother over dinner, or you're talking to the neighbor over the fence. There's this common knowledge out there that when you pass away, there's big taxes. And if we're talking about a 4.5% tax, perhaps the situation is discussed a little bit more than it ought be. Okay, so that's my quick take on Pennsylvania's death tax. Let me give you the other tax rates. If you would pass away and leave assets to a sibling, it's 12%. If you would leave assets to a nonprofit, it's 0%. And if you would leave assets to anyone else, nieces, nephews, friends, neighbors, you're talking about a 15% tax. So the 15% tax, like if I don't have kids and I'm leaving all of my money to my nephew's going to get dinged at 15 points, but I still might not rearrange my life to save my nephew 15%. Listen here, kiddo, be glad you're getting something in the first place. I'm not giving up control. The major asset that is not subject to Pennsylvania's death tax is life insurance. So if you have life insurance, that number doesn't count, but pretty much everything you're going to own in Pennsylvania is going to count for the Pennsylvania inheritance tax. This tax, frankly, is a pain in the neck. I don't like it. I don't like any tax, I guess, but this one is just, they've got this thing. Pennsylvania, Tim's opinion, has made this thing more complicated than it needs to be. A lot of other states have simplified their death taxes to match more the federal levels, the federal exemptions, or at least close to. And in a lot of states, in a lot of other states, they've eliminated death taxes entirely, but not here in the Commonwealth. We still have a death tax. Okay. So that's Pennsylvania's death tax. If you have more questions about that, I've written blog articles about it. I've discussed it in past radio shows. In case you tuned in late, you are listening to the Life and Legacy Show. My name is Tim Seckler. I have the Seckler Law Firm located in Morris, Pennsylvania. We have a couple other offices around the city. And my job is to guide folks on estate planning considerations, wills and trusts and powers of attorney, and why we use these documents, and how you can use them effectively to, one, get the stuff to your family rather than the government, and two, make sure we don't lose it all to long-term care expenses, which, by the way, is the other reason that the guys at McDonald's are giving their house to their kids. They're trying to protect it from the nursing home, right? And here's the thing. And listen, this is all, we discuss all of this. If what I'm talking about here on the show is of interest to you, you should check out one of our live workshops. It's an hour and a half. You can ask me all the questions you want. I typically do them personally. Come to the live workshop, and we'll chat about all this. We'll talk about trust. We'll talk about wills. We'll talk about taxes. We'll talk about asset protection. We'll talk about all these things so that you get the information you need to be able to make the decisions you want to make to protect your family. So come check out one of the live workshops. We also have webinars. I've got pre-recorded things on the website. So I see it as my first job to educate people, because I think educated people make better decisions for their families, and we do it because we want to help people. And of course, we hope you hire us to do your estate planning. But if you don't hire me to do your estate planning, look, education's always free. So, all right. Now, let's talk about this issue, where we want to go. There's a couple of things I want to chat about, and I'm going to run out of time. I want to talk about so I said the guys at McDonald's give their assets away for two reasons. The first reason is they want to save taxes, but they don't really even know what that means. If they knew that it was only 4.5%, would they really be giving their house to their kid for that reason? And I think a lot of the answers would be no. The second issue is they want to protect it from the nursing home. But here's the thing. You don't have to give up ownership of your asset to protect it from the nursing home. In one way or the other, there's other ways to do this. I prefer the use of trusts. I put your house into a trust if you're concerned about this stuff, because what you really have to give up is not control, it's access, right? And so you can create a trust that says that the money can't come back to you, and in a roundabout, well, not even a roundabout way, using the trust will protect the house from the nursing home without having to put it into your kid's name. because putting it in the kid's name is typically a tax mistake. And what have you given up? If I put my house in my kid's name, I've given up control. What happens if my kid gets a divorce? What happens if my kid gets sued? What happens if my kid dies before me? If my kid dies before me and his will leaves everything to his wife, now I'm living in a house that's owned by my former daughter-in-law. What happens when she remarries? Where do I live? What's going to happen here? What if she gets a divorce? You know, I'm really hesitant on advising people to give up control of their assets, but I'm not really hesitant on telling people there's some steps you might want to take to protect those assets, because this long-term care system is terrible and it makes people go broke. So there you have it. Learn more about that at the workshop. All right. I do want to talk to you about capital gains taxes real briefly. There's 2 points I want to make here. A capital gains tax is a tax that's due on the sale of an asset that has grown in value. So let's say I bought a house for $100,000. By the time I want to sell it, it's worth $250,000. Okay, I've had a $150,000 gain. If I sell that house, there's a capital gain, right? And there might be a tax due. Now, the tax rate on a capital gains tax, on a capital gain, can be 18% federal and state combined. The biggest exemption on the capital gains tax is the sale of the primary residence. There's some large exemptions where they may not tax you on the sale of your primary residence. But for the people that put their house in their kids' names and then 7 years later we need to sell that house so that dad can go to a personal care home, we want the home sale proceeds to help pay for it, but we put it in the kids' names. Well, now who's selling the house? The kids. And if the kids sell the house, it's not their primary residence, which means the sale of that property is no longer exempt from the capital gains tax, and we just made a $30,000 tax mistake. So be careful thinking that doing these transfers, estate planning is a little bit like physics. You know the old rule from high school physics class that every action has an equal and opposite reaction? Remember that? I think it's one of Newton's laws. There you go. My high school physics teacher should be impressed. But the point is, you try to make a move to save Pennsylvania's inheritance tax, and you end up subjecting the house to the capital gains tax, which hits at 4 times the rate, and nobody told you, right? So when I see these transfers of the house to the kids for $1, I think, ooh, maybe somebody didn't tell this family about capital gains taxes. Okay, now I want to talk to you about the new death tax. The new death tax impacts the middle class. Okay, now they don't call it the new death tax. That would be too obvious. They called it the Secure Act. All right, Secure Act. Sounds great. Why would I vote against the Secure Act? Well, here's what it did. This thing was voted on in the fall of 2019 and came into effect at the beginning of 2020. And it is the biggest tax hike on the middle class that has occurred during my career. And if you've been around longer than me, probably during your career too. Here's the quick setup about this thing. If you have a retirement account, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, it used to be the case that if my dad would pass away and leave me his retirement account, I could take that money and essentially make it become my retirement account. There was this thing called an inherited IRA. So let's say my dad had $100,000 in a retirement account. He wanted to leave it to me. I could take the $100,000. I put it in my name as an inherited IRA. I can invest the money. Now, the IRS would make me take out a little bit every year, but it wasn't much. I'd have to take out a couple of percentage points. So that account would grow. So now it's getting tax-deferred growth because it's a retirement account. And I got to stretch it for my life expectancy. So I don't have to pull the money out until I'm 84. So if my dad would pass away when I'm in my 50s, I could stretch that money for 3 decades. Boy, I could triple, quadruple that money in 3 decades in the stock market. And then dad's retirement account could become my retirement account, and I wouldn't have to think about this stuff so much. It's a leg up. This thing called the inherited IRA was the biggest opportunity for middle class families to give their kids a leg up, to enjoy upward mobility. If you think about the demographics that are going to unfold over the next 20 years, we got the baby boomers reaching their senior years. Right? And as they start passing away at greater percentages later, and all of them have IRAs because they've been told their entire lives to save money in the company plan, right? Take the company match, put in the IRA, pay taxes later, right? So we've all been good boys and girls, and we've always followed the advice because the promise was you can save money better that way. One of the other promises was when there are leftovers and you pass away, you can leave that to your kids and then they can take an inherited IRA. And as the baby boomers pass away and all of these billions of dollars go transferring to the kids of the baby boomers, the kids of the baby boomers had an awesome opportunity to let the money ride, enjoy tax deferred growth for several decades. And then when they hit retirement age, there'd be money available, which would help the next generation. It was beautiful. We've been talking about it for a decade. This thing is awesome. Don't blow it. Don't blow it. Well, you don't have to blow it because the government did it for you with something called the Secure Act. And, when this thing came to pass, and this thing went through like lightning fast, I haven't seen Congress get together on anything in the last 10 years except for this. This was like the thing that, it went through like in under a month or two from being proposed to being the law of the land. And look, I had articles in the paper. I had articles in the Post-Gazette. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I didn't have the radio show at the time, but pay attention to this. This is a giant tax hike because here's what it did. It took away the IRA and the inherited IRA from your kids. So if you have an IRA account, like same fact pattern, if my dad leaves me $100,000 and I'm in my 50s, I inherit his IRA. I don't get to stretch it for my life expectancy. I got to pull all that money out in 10 years. Right? Now, if I'm in my 50s and I have to pull this money out in 10 years, what do we know about most people in their 50s? Well, they're still working, which means they still have high ordinary income tax rates. And I hope to be in a high tax bracket. That's the goal, right? We all would like to make a little bit more money. So I'm hoping I'm in a high tax bracket. Dad leaves me his IRA now, and I got to pull all that money out within 10 years rather than being able to stretch it for my life expectancy. Now I got to dump that income on top of my regular 1040 income, right? Because that is ordinary income. So now, not only do I lose a couple of decades of tax deferred growth, I now have to pay income on it in a consolidated period when I'm in my highest wage earning years. And what do we know about tax rates? They're going to have to go up because the government is kicking off another $3 trillion bill every other month. Right? So tax rates are going to have to go up. We're borrowing from our kids. We're borrowing from our grandkids right now. And one of the ways they're going to pay for it is they're going to take your IRAs. They're going to take the money your kids, where you used to be able to leave your kid an IRA and it would grow for several decades and the money could triple or quadruple. Now that money's going to get smoked by income taxes. They're going to lose a third of it. And it's just a bad deal all the way around. So why did they do it? Well, go back and read about the thing. The insurance companies liked it. The IRS, of course, likes it. But at the end of the day, this is class warfare at its finest. This is, wait a minute, what are these baby boomers about to get away with here? What is the middle class about to get away with? What do you mean? Wait a minute. What do you mean these guys are going to be able to transfer kids to their money in a tax efficient way? And the players that be didn't like it, and they changed it. And it is an enormous tax hike on you, middle class America, on you, upper middle class America, because who has the IRAs? Well, we do. The middle class Americans do. Because we've always followed the advice of taking a company plan and investing in the IRAs. Super wealthy people, they don't have IRAs. They have assets. They have real estate. They have companies. They have whatever they have. It's not, they may have IRAs, but it's not the bulk of their net worth like it is for you and me. And so for them, this thing really doesn't apply because it only applies to IRA funds. And so, I'm telling you this. I know this radio show is played on a Saturday morning, and I hope that I haven't ruined your day. But if you didn't know about this, you need to be paying attention to it. You need to talk to us. You need to talk to your financial advisor. You need to understand how this thing impacted you. And oh, by the way, only about 3 Congress people in this country voted no. If you live in Pennsylvania, if you're listening to this show, everybody you could have possibly voted for voted yes. Some of these guys had their name on the bill. And to me, I'm furious about it. I've been furious about it for a year and a half. I'm still furious about it, and you should be too. If you want to learn more about stuff like this, if you want to be in the loop on the next thing coming to take your money, if you want to be savvy with your planning about some of these taxes and making sure you're making the right decisions, give me a shout. Come to one of our workshops. I am sort of motivated by helping you understand this super complicated system they've given us and trying real hard to protect your stuff. So you can find out more at my website about the upcoming educational events, sechlerlawfirm.com, lawfirm.com. We have some upcoming in-person workshops. We have some upcoming webinars. And we have some pre-recorded courses you can take to learn all about this. If you decide to come to one of the webinars, at the end of the webinar, we will offer you free consultations. You'll sit down with one of myself or one of the other lawyers in the office and figure out what the right plan is for you. So I hope you found today's show educational. I hope I didn't ruin your day in telling you about how the IRS is about to steal your retirement account. But hey, that's the way it works. So again, disclaimer at the beginning, disclaimer at the end. Don't make financial decisions or legal decisions based on what you hear on this radio show or any other radio show. This is education and entertainment. If you need help, check us out at secularlawfirm.com. I appreciate you listening. Have a wonderful day.